Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to No Mind by Swami Sarvarpiananda. So this was kind of suggested a little bit, and it's quite a frequent one, sorry, quite a soon one, but I think since it was coming up, might as well go ahead and do it. Sunways, No Mind, not sure how to think about that. I'm assuming once you've already separated yourself from the body, the next thing is to separate yourself from the mind, because I think most people can see that they are not the body, but have an issue with maybe seeing that they're not the mind.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning. You're all aware today that we have an interesting subject, no mind. A few weeks ago when we announced this subject, a gentleman asked me, so no mind, I was so intrigued. The no mind, does it mean not thinking or being unconscious? So what is this no mind? I was giving a series of lectures on the Mandukya Karika of Gaudapada. I've given 2 talks on this. I think the first one was the essence of all Vedanta, based on the first chapter of the Mandukya Karika. The second one was the ultimate truth, based on the second chapter of the Mandukya Karika. And today's talk, No Mind, is based on a couple of verses in the third chapter of the Mandukya Karika. The third chapter of the Mandukya Karika is called Advaita Prakaranam, the chapter on non-duality. In the first chapter, the Upanishad was there, the Mandukya Upanishad. And the teachings of the Mandukya Upanishad are discussed in detail, are described in more detail in the second, third, and fourth chapters. So, in the second chapter, what was done was, on the basis of logic, on the basis of reason, and our own experience, the falsity of the world is demonstrated. That the world, Jagat Mithya, world is supposed to be an appearance in non-dual Vedanta. That is demonstrated, that is proved using logic based on our own experience. That's the second chapter of the Mandukya Karika. The third chapter of the Mandukya Karika is, the world is an appearance, but an appearance of what? What is it that is appearing as the world? The classic example in Vedanta, the rope appearing as the snake. All right, the snake is false. There's no real snake. But then what is it that is appearing as the false snake? It's the rope which is appearing as the false snake. What is it that is appearing as this false world, illusory world? It is Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss. Or as we saw in the first chapter of the Mandukya Karika, the fourth aspect, literally the word Turiya means the fourth aspect, but we saw that it does not really mean the fourth. It means the one reality which appears as our waking experience, this one, as our dream experience, and as our deep sleep experience, that one consciousness, Turiya. That is the reality which appears as this world. Therefore, the essential teaching of Vedanta, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Brahman alone is real and the world is an appearance. And what are we? Real or appearance? We are none other than Brahman. Jiva Brahmeva Naparaha. This thing is talked about and demonstrated in the third chapter called Advaita Prakaranam, the chapter on non-duality. And this is demonstrated with the help of reason. In the third chapter, Gaudapada tells us samsara, this problem which we have, samsara, this is duality. Duality causes samsara. And moksha, freedom, non-duality is freedom. So Advaita is moksha and Dvaita is samsara. You might say that seems unfair. Why would Dvaita be samsara, duality be samsara, in what sense? But just look at our own experience. We have duality. By the way, when Dvaita or duality, when we talk about it in Vedanta, what it means is this subject-object duality, which is the very basis of our experience of this world. I am a limited being separate from all of you. This feeling, which we naturally take for granted, I am separate from all of you. You are different, I am different. This difference, this is the duality, subject-object duality. I am the experiencer and all of this is something separate from me. This subject-object duality is at the root of samsara. Take our experience. We can just look at our experience. In the waking world, is this subject-object duality there right now? Yes. We experience it. And there is samsara. There are things which we like and we are chasing it. There are things which we are scared of, afraid of, uneasy about. We try to avoid it. And thus it gives rise to strife and struggle, what we call samsara. Constant change, aging and decay and death, and probably rebirth again. So this is what we call samsara. And this goes on. This is our waking experience.
Would you consider, I guess, like the blissful part of this waking world as samsara as well? Not just the bad, but also the good.
Look at our dream experience. In dreams, do we have this duality, Dvaita? Yes. In dreams also, we have good dreams and bad dreams, but everywhere we also have that subject-object experience. I am experiencing something. Though later on when you wake up, you realize it was all in my mind. But in the dream, we don't feel that. In the dream, we feel, I am the experiencer and this is something that I'm experiencing. The duality, subject-object duality is there. Dvaita is there. And so samsara is also there. What about deep sleep? When we completely fall asleep and we are not aware of the world, we do not dream dreams in our mind, we are not even aware of ourselves as sleeping. Deep sleep, is there samsara? We do not experience samsara in deep sleep. I sometimes say, the person with the greatest problems in the world, suppose person is sick and maybe dying and on life support in Mount Sinai or something like that, terrible condition. And insurance is not willing to pay up also. So all sorts of problems, terrible problems. And yet, when that person goes to sleep, falls asleep, deep sleep, that person has no problem. Yeah. In deep sleep, even the sickest person on life support in Mount Sinai has absolutely no problem. So samsara, the sufferings of samsara are not there in deep sleep. Notice something, in deep sleep the duality is also not experienced. Subject and object are also not experienced. Duality, Dvaita is not there, or at least is not experienced in deep sleep. And so suffering, samsara is also not experienced in deep sleep. Gaudapada seems to have a point when he says duality and samsara go together. And non-duality, where there is no subject and object, is freedom from samsara. But does that mean we have to fall asleep and stay asleep? That doesn't seem to be a solution. Though it's not as silly as it sounds, because a lot of people try to take that route. What else is, drinking, taking drugs, trying to forget our sorrows? It's basically to stop this experience of samsara. But that is no route. That is not, even Gaudapada says, actually, samsara is also there. Duality is also there in deep sleep. In what form? He says in the seed form, bijavastha. After all, deep sleep, we wake. We come out of deep sleep. And again, samsara comes back. The same body, the same physical problems, the same financial problems, relationship problems, all of them again come back, which means in deep sleep, the problem was there, not experienced as such in deep sleep, but in the seed form, like a computer being switched off. When you switch it on, all the data is still there. Good and the bad, everything is still stored. It all comes back. So deep sleep is no permanent solution.
That's a terrible way I thought about it. Unless you're deep sleep until you're deep sleep or something. But yeah, that's still terrible. It's not a solution to that. So I was looking up samsara. I just wanted to make sure I understood that to some degree. But I guess it's not very good definition I'm getting. Samsara, flowing around. I was thinking, is samsara, as far as I remember, I always thought it to be the bad things in this world, the suffering in this world, the constant rebirth in this world, but it's always been negative. But does that also include the positive? If I have heard it, I don't remember, but I don't think I've heard it ever spoken as in the positive. Rebirth, I've heard that, yes. But that would include both the positive and the negative of rebirth. Because when you're born again, you don't always suffer in life, but you're not always in bliss or happiness in life too. It's a mixture. But is samsara also the good in life, the happiness, the joy, the bliss in life? Let me know in the comments. That's the thing I've just come to realize as he was talking. It's like, is samsara just everything in life, good and bad, or is it just the bad and being reborn in this suffering world?
Then Gaudapada, how do we solve this problem of samsara, of duality? Even Shankaracharya, in his introduction to the Mandukya Karika, he says, Rogartasya roga nivritti eva swasthata. Just as for a sick person, we seem to be on the Mount Sinai example again. Shankaracharya, 1400 years ago, he gives the same example. Just as for a sick person, curing the disease is attainment of health. Health is basically getting rid of the disease. Health is the natural state. Similarly, he says, the cessation of duality, that non-duality, which is the cessation of duality, that is liberation. Duality is bondage, Dvaita is bondage, and Advaita, non-duality, is liberation. He says, the duality of what kind? When the rope appears as the snake, and we realize the snake is nothing other than the rope. That means, in a sense, the snake sort of, in a way you can say, it merges back into the rope. Actually, there was no snake. There was a misperception. In the same way, when non-duality is misperceived as a dual universe, samsara is there. When we realize the non-duality here and now, samsara is not there. So Shankaracharya also agrees. Duality, samsara, non-duality, moksha, liberation. So how do we go about it? In the 3rd chapter, 31st verse, Gaudapada Acharya, who is, by the way, Shankaracharya's teacher's teacher. You know, when you study the Mandukya Karika and you study Shankaracharya's works, you seem to see, quite naturally, a change in the tone. Gaudapada seems to be much more extreme, what you might call hardcore non-dualist. Shankaracharya's range is much broader. I asked a Swami in the Himalayas, do you think that there is a difference between Gaudapada and Shankara? And why does Gaudapada seem to be more hardcore non-dualist, giving no quarter? Then that Swami said, in the typical Hindi of that place in the Uttaranchal, in the Himalayas, he said, Gaudapada Acharya to bahut pakkad Mahatma the. Gaudapada was, see, the word fakkad it has different meanings in India. In the lower regions, in the plains, it means a beggar. Like what you might call a hobo here. I don't know if there are any more hobos, but so like a beggar. But higher up in the Himalayas, a Fakkad Mahatma is a monk who is a kind of a daredevil, who doesn't care for the world, is completely dependent on God, and absolutely has no care for the samsara, for this world at all. So he says Gaudapada was like that. didn't care for anything. And then I said, then what about Shankaracharya? He said, Shankaracharya to Jagat Guru the na. Shankaracharya was a world teacher. So he had to carry everybody along. So his approach is a much more universal approach. We may think Shankaracharya is very non-dualistic, but actually several steps ahead of him is his Guru's Guru, Gaudapada Acharya. So Gaudapada points out something interesting in the 3rd chapter of the Mandukya Karika. He says, notice one thing. Duality is linked to the functioning of the mind. Where there is mind, there is duality. Where there is no mind, there is non-duality. There's a beautiful verse. He says, Mano drishyam idam dvaitam yat kinchit sacharacharam manaso hyamani bhave dvaitam naivopalabhyate. A beautiful verse which means this world is a projection of the mind or is experienced by the mind. This world, the word he uses is this duality. This duality is projected or experienced by the mind. What does he mean by duality? Yat kinchit sacharacharam. Anything what you see in this universe, moving and unmoving, living and non-living, everything is duality. This is experienced by the mind. Then, when the mind becomes no mind, manaso hi amani bhave. So he has this very beautiful phrase, amani bhava. It means the no mind state of the mind. No mind state, amani bhava. Then,
sorry, let me rewind that so that we can. The no mind state. That's just it's just kind of weird. Trying to listen to that from a Western mind. So again, the way I work is I have, you could say, multiple minds, which is saying no mind. Maybe one of those states it happens frequently for me, but it's not in the same way. Anyways, that I can imagine how people would think in different ways, because I guess you could say I can build a mind of the Western mind. In the Western mind, it says no mind. What do you mean no mind? You just cut out the brain or you turn it off? Then how can you function without a mind? Now this thing is like, yeah, like I could see someone saying that's like no mind. That doesn't make any sense. You have to have a mind. And I guess they're kind of, I hope he clarifies it. What is the no mind state? Is it no thoughts, more than likely? Now, and that's the thing that I guess can be misinterpreted if you say no mind, and it really means just no thoughts, but the mind is still there.
State of the mind. No
State
mind
of the
state.
mind.
Amani bhava. Then what happens? Dvaitam naivopalabhyate. Duality is no longer cognized. The words are very carefully chosen. He does not say duality is not experienced anymore. Upalabhyate. This is difficult to translate. It's a very loaded term in Sanskrit. Dvaitam naiva upalabhyate. But the basic idea we get from here is mind and no mind. This concept of no mind. When the mind becomes no mind, no more duality, non-duality, and no more samsara, moksha. So the problem of moksha and samsara, liberation from samsara, is actually the problem of dvaita and advaita, duality and non-duality. The problem of duality and non-duality is further reduced to the problem of mind, no mind. Amani bhava. So what is this no mind? What is this no mind? Is it, clearly we saw when the mind does not function in deep sleep, there seems to be no duality. But then Gaudapada himself points out the seed of duality is there in deep sleep because you wake out of deep sleep. And all of the things which you see in samsara are very much present there because they come back. If they didn't, every morning you would wake up fresh, completely blank.
Well, it makes me think of a movie of, is it 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and can't remember her name, or just there. I think there was another movie, but I can't remember. It's a long time ago, where they can only remember up to a certain point. Then after that, everything's always new, no matter how long they lived afterwards. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, that must be frustrating having to relearn everything over and over again. And then, I mean, the Adam Sandler movie 50 First Dates, she every time she wakes up, she has to watch this video which tells the story of her life, and it catches her up from the time of the accident up until the current time. That could be 10 years worth of information in that, video. And it's like, you wake up and you just realize that so much of your life is missing. So it would seem refreshing, but then I guess that's the thing with the memory, is the fact that this video is memory, and if it weren't for that video, maybe Adam Sandler's wife at the time would have none of that, would not be emotional, because she'd think that's the first day that she was alive. But having to realize that she can't remember any of that becomes, and she has to relive that every single day. That's like kind of like being reborn in samsara again. That constant emotion that you realize, I've lost. I don't have this precious memory in my mind anymore, and I have to remember all of this. I can't believe I can't remember this, all the things that we have done. But yeah, so I don't know if people would wake up fresh. I guess unless they don't have memory of their past, then yeah, every day would be like a whole new day. But until that memory is ever reminded to you, then you're like, oh my gosh, how long have I been living like this? What's going to happen when I go back to sleep? I won't remember any of this. You think you'll be dreading it, but when you wake up, it's all forgotten. Oh, it's another movie, it's I think a Black Mirror episode where they wipe the memory of the people, and they wake up without any memory of anything. They're in the middle of something, and they're like, "What's going on?" And they're repeating that same day over and over and over again. But it's more of a bad thing.
Hard disk wiped out. Yeah. There was a cinema about this, Hollywood. I didn't see it, but I had read the review about it. That really struck me many, many years ago. It is called the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh, I heard that.
The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind of a person who forgets everything and then wakes up fresh. So that would, but that does not happen. Every day we wake up with all the knowledge of the past. So the seed of the waking samsara is there in deep sleep. Deep sleep is not a solution. Then what is a solution? What about meditation, samadhi? The path of samadhi, the yogis, the Patanjali yogis, Raja yogis, what they do is, they say, yes, this samsara has to be wiped out. How does it have to be wiped out? When the mind is no mind, when you meditate, and all the modifications of the mind settle down, the world will not be perceived. There's a very important principle to grasp here. This is not what Gaudapada says. We are going to cut this down. But there's a very important principle to grasp here, which is very practical for our lives. I'll tell you something. Spirituality or no spirituality, yoga or no yoga, Vedanta or no Vedanta, all the samsara that you and I, what we experience, what we are experiencing right now, we are experiencing in our minds. Do you agree? No, you've read too much Vedanta, that's why you agree so much. But think about it. Every experience that you have from the beginning till now, and whatever experience we will have from now on, all our experiences are experiences in the mind. Without mind, no experience. You will say, no, there are things outside and we are experiencing them. Actually, what is happening is, when you look at the flowers there, what is happening is light falls on those flowers, and the light is reflected back to your eyes. It enters your eyes, and in the lens of the eyes, an image is formed. And see, already at this stage, what has entered into your eyes is light, not the flower. If the flower entered your eyes, then you would be blind. What enters our eyes are not people and flowers and trees and cards. No. That would be a disaster. Only thing that enters our eyes is light. And then what happens? The light, it forms an image there, and then the image is, from there it is transferred to not light, electrical impulses in the neurons. There are neurochemicals which are working, and they generate little bursts of electricity between the synapses of the neurons, and that is transmitted from the optic nerves to the certain centers in the brain. So when it reaches the brain, no flower, not even light, not even an image, bursts, tiny, tiny bursts of electricity. That's what reaches the brain. And somehow from that, how we don't know. Neuroscientists also don't know. Just up to that point, they are beginning to understand a lot. But from that point onwards, it still is a mystery. How is that little bit of electricity reconstituted back into the living experience of a flower? Where? In your mind. So far, nobody in the world will dispute it. Even the most hardcore materialist, reductionist will say, yes, this is what is happening. We can't dispute that. Nobody says that actually a flower enters into your mind there. No. It is presented to your mind, to your consciousness as this flower. So this flower which you are seeing right now, you're seeing it in your mind. This flower is nothing but your mind, vritti, a thought in your mind. All of samsara, your most beloved person, the most annoying person you know, the best of experiences, the most miserable of experiences, all of them are in your mind.
Electrical signals.
You say, no, they are outside and they are being represented in your mind. All right, that's a particular point, philosophical point of view. Representationism. That is one kind of philosophical point of view. But nobody will deny what you are experiencing in the mind. So what is the great secret that we can learn from this? Again, not our main subject today, but worthwhile learning this. Therefore, the quality of our experience depends on the mind, not really on the world outside. Our natural reaction, our natural way of trying to make our lives better is to trying to change the objective, things outside. A wiser person tries to change the subjective. Our whole perception of things and the way we understand and react to things inside the mind.
100%. And that's the thing I feel like I see right now there's a lot of is people demanding other people to change for them because they feel uncomfortable or they have a belief that they want to push on other people, and that applies throughout the entirety of human history too. But yes, it's something that, again, Sadhguru talks about how, you know, we don't have the instruction. I mean, the one instruction manual that we should be reading is our own, because, you know, we have control over this body and not anything else externally. And that's absolutely true. I mean, obviously we can manipulate objects outside, but unless it's like, if it's a person or something that we don't own, we can't exactly manipulate that. I mean, we can, but that might be a bad thing. But the thing that we have absolute control and manipulation over is our body and mind. And I feel that in this modern day of error, in such a comfortable and lax world where everything's at your fingertips and you can get whatever you want, that now the world must change, and there's barely any hardship, so that, you know, the people out there are not experiencing what genuine hardship is, so they're so entitled and they have to create trouble in their life just because they want to be the most victims of victims in the world, because everything else is oppressive and they're the reason why they are feeling oppressed or feeling sad or whatever's going wrong in their life. It's external, not internal.
One of the most beautiful things I've heard comes from a monk in the Himalayas who said, I'll tell you in Hindi and then translate into English, शांत मन में भला संसार कौन देखा है? Whoever has seen samsara in a peaceful mind. What is the great thing about this? Normally we think just the opposite. My mind is restless because samsara makes me restless.
There you go.
This monk says, you have samsara because your mind is restless. If your mind were peaceful, in the same situation, a person with peaceful mind will experience at least less suffering. Not that everything will go away, but suffering will definitely be less. Good deal of our suffering is our own contribution of our own minds. Again, I'm going a little off track, but it's worth mentioning here. A few years back, I attended a medical conference, not as a doctor, but I was invited to speak. The conference was on pain, and management of pain. And one of the sessions was talk therapies, so counseling for pain management. And there were different people giving talks, counselors, doctors, patients suffering from chronic pain, so on. One of the doctors said something very interesting. He said, I'll let you into a dirty secret of the pharmaceutical industry.
Hold on, I wanna try to predict that. Is it gonna talk about drugs they can put in that will block pain receptors so that they don't feel pain?
The painkillers, he said, some multi-billion-dollar worldwide industry painkillers. He says the effectiveness is less than 50%.
Oh.
Less than half of the drugs have any effect at all.
It's because we develop
Some
immunity.
of it might be placebo effect, and less than half of it has any. And there are a lot of side effects. That is there. Side effects are guaranteed. And then he drew 3 circles. Pain. Big circle. This is for chronic pain. Continuously people who have different kinds of back pain, things like that. So big circle, inner circle, and the smaller circle inside. He said the smaller circle is the actual physical pain felt. And the bigger circle is the circle around it is the expectation of pain. Oh, it's going to hurt again, it's going to hurt again, it's going to be uneasy. The mental uneasiness and misery coming out of the pain, that is the bigger circle. That accounts for more of the total suffering than the actual physical pain.
Sorry, that's why I don't like talking whenever he's talking. I'm sorry, I'll rewind that. I want to hear that last part.
The mental uneasiness and misery coming out of the pain, that is the bigger physical pain felt.
Okay.
And the bigger circle is the circle around it is the expectation of pain. Oh, it's going to hurt again, it's going to hurt again, it's going to be uneasy. The mental uneasiness and misery coming out of the pain, that is the bigger circle. That accounts for more of the total suffering than the actual physical pain. And the much bigger circle again around it are all the associated social problems that I cannot go such and such place because I will have this pain, things like that. Many other things which are felt to be disabilities. So a good deal, he says, about 70 to 80% of our discomfort and suffering is contributed by our own minds. Only 20 to 30% is the actual physical pain.
That's actually pretty interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. Well, don't get me wrong, if you go to the ER and you're asked to move so they can get an x-ray and it hurts, yeah, that's 100% true. that is 100% that small part. But yeah, and it is very true. This even goes along the lines of like pleasure stuff, whereas she's like, oh man, the new car's gonna go, or the new phone's coming out, can't wait to get it, I pre-ordered it, oh that's so exciting. And then it's like, it's 1 week, 3 days, 1 hour, you get the phone and it's like, it's super fun, and then it goes away. So the initial burst, that small part, is the new phone coming out, you pre-ordered it. And then the bigger circle is the expectations, like, oh, only a few more weeks, few more days, few more hours. And the bigger circle, which is supposed to be the more, maybe I'm misinterpreting him, but I feel it's like this way too, where you're like, oh, I finally got it, and you start enjoying it, like a big hype of energy, and then it just kind of goes away, like it's just another tool. And right, and he's talking about the middle circle, sorry. In terms of the pain, yeah, there's this like, oh my gosh, it's gonna hurt again, it's gonna hurt again, it's gonna hurt again. That build up, like fear, where you're like watching a movie, you're building up that tension, even though the scare might not be scary, but the fact that you're building up, it creates that excitement. All of it to me seems linked now.
And the medicines, if they could work, they could only reduce that actual physical pain. They will not address the thinking of our minds. And even there also medicines don't work half the time. So anyway, back to the thing that our minds, samsara, a good deal of samsara is in the mind. If the mind can be made into no mind, the yogi's solution is chitta vritti nirodha. Calm down the mind. When the mind is absolutely still, no samsara. So they call it samadhi. And they have 8 steps. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you will see yama and niyama, the moral disciplines. Then how to sit steady. If you want to make the mind steady, the body must be steady. People are so restless. I met this young student a couple of years back. Brilliant, going to one of the Ivy League universities, and his parents introduced him. Very nice young man. But what I saw, he couldn't sit still. Even while standing and talking to me, he was jumping around. Steady. The mind has been compared to, you have a bowl with water in it. If you shake the bowl ever so little, the water will splash out. So imagine how steady you have to keep the bowl. Our bodies are always trembling and moving. One Olympic, the rifle shooting, he had written an article. He said we are not generally aware of how much our bodies are moving. It's only when you have to keep your body very, very still for the target shooting. Because a little trembling of the hand also can throw the bullet off several feet at the end of the target. So they have to be very still. And it's interesting to note that at the moment of releasing the bullet, they have to hold their breath. So pranayama. Yes, literally, they have to control the breathing. Now, asana, first how to sit steady. Then pranayama, how to control the breath. Why breath? Because it steadies the body and the mind. The breath is the link between, it's a subtle link between body and mind. The breath. So control of the breath. Then pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from the world outside, from their engagement in the world outside. Then dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Deeper and deeper focus. First there is savikalpa samadhi, or in yoga system, sampragyata samadhi. And then finally nirvikalpa samadhi or asampragyata samadhi, when the mind is absolutely still. What do you get out of it? When the mind is absolutely still, they say, you see the witness, the real self beyond the mind becomes clear. So that's the yogi's approach. Shut down the mind. That's the yogi's approach. Gaudapada does not agree. No mind is not thinking. No mind is not shutting down the mind. No mind is not being inactive. What is no mind then?
Yeah.
Amani bhava, no mind, basically means managing the mind, spiritualizing the mind. This is the central question of spiritual life. Whether you are a devotee, whether you are on the path of knowledge, whether you are a Buddhist, whether you are a meditator, whatever it is, ultimately, whatever the philosophy, it comes down, the practical thing comes down to handling the mind. Therefore, you will see this question, what we are talking about today, no mind. This question was actually asked to Sri Ramakrishna by Master Mahashaya, M. We don't think about it that way because the Gospel of Ramakrishna is written in such a simple language. But the tremendous depth in that, I'll tell you what M asked. The very first question that M asked in his second visit. The first visit, there was no chance of deep discussion. The first real discussion that M had with Sri Ramakrishna, and the very first question he asked, which shows the caliber of the mind. Our questions show a caliber of our own minds. I heard about a university where the examinations are, not that the questions are asked and you have to answer the questions. Rather, you are asked to formulate the best possible question you can. And you're graded on the toughest questions that you can formulate. And the students say it's actually much harder to formulate a difficult problem than to solve a problem. So M, he asks two questions. And I think they are the fundamental questions of spiritual life. The first question is what we are dealing with today, no mind. You know what he asks Sri Ramakrishna? He says in Bengali, Ishware mon ki kore hai. how can I fix my mind on God? Why is that simple question? But why is that question so deep? Because if he asks, how can I attain liberation? How can I find God? Sri Ramakrishna is going to tell him, think about God all the time. Now that's easier said than done. The real question is, how do I think about God all the time? How do I fix my mind on God? He'll say, love God. Sri Ramakrishna's often was said, Vakulata holei habe. If you have intense desire for God, if intense longing for God, you will realize God, you will become enlightened. But then the question really is, how do I get intense longing for God? That's the question. So M is so intelligent, sensitive. He asks that question first. Not how I will realize God. How can I fix my mind on God? He asks that question. That's the first question. Sri Ramakrishna's answer, 3 sentences. He covers the entire range of spiritual practice. Simple sentences. He says, sing the glories of God, take the names of God. Ishwara Nam Gun Gan Korbe. Bhakti Yoga, the path of bhakti. In one sentence. Then he says, Dhyan Korbe Mone Bone Kone. Meditate. Meditate how? Where? Meditate in your mind, meditate in a corner, meditate in the forest. Why? Which he means in a secluded location. You can't get you can get Central Park here, of course, but not very good for meditation. I tried it. It's actually easier to meditate in this hall here than in Central Park. There's something about the tanmatra, the underlying vibration there. Though it's very beautiful. So meditate in the forest, meditate in or a secluded place or ashram, wherever in the mountains, and meditate in the mind. Meditate in a corner of your house, wherever you are. Basically, Raja Yoga, the path of meditation. He indicated it. And
Bhakti Raja, would it be Jnana or Karma next? It had to be Karma. Thoughts?
The third one is what interests us, what would make Gaudapada perk up his ears. He says, always do viveka, the philosophical, spiritual discrimination, viveka. We'll talk about this later on. Always do viveka between the eternal and the non-eternal. And what you find to be non-eternal, temporary and transient, have vairagya for it, dispassion for it. Follow the eternal, give up the non-eternal. So 3 sentences. Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga. You see the essence. He has indicated.
So I'm wondering if he's actually combining Bhakti and Karma together. Perhaps that because they're almost intertwined. You could say either intertwined or dependent on each other, because devotion and action are kind of love. I think of Bhakti as devotion, but I think it's, from what I've always heard, it's love of God. But love always entitles an action, in my opinion. I don't know. I think God, I can't remember his name. Swami Anubhavananda. I can't remember his name, but he talked about it. Pure love without action. I don't know how that's possible. Well, I'm sure it's possible, but I cannot think of a moment where, perhaps maybe I'm just because I'm a person that shows love through action. So maybe that's the reason why Bhakti and Karma are always the same for me. Bhakti, Karma, yes, Bhakti and Karma. So I'm wondering, is it truly just Bhakti Yoga, or is there Bhakti and Karma together in that one?
And in such simple language, in the most ordinary Bengali, you'll think that I knew that. It is nothing very great about it. But he has given you just hold on to that, you will realize God. That's just enough. Exactly what M asked, that is the answer he has given.
That's the second
What
question.
is no mind? The yogi says no mind is samadhi, shutting down the mind. What does Gaudapada say? The next verse. The verse I just quoted was 3.31. 3rd chapter, 31st verse. Now 3rd chapter, 32nd verse. Next verse tells us what is Gaudapada's advice about no mind. Atma satyanubodhena na sankalpayate yada amanastam tadayati grahya bhave tadagraham. What does it mean? When you realize yourself, the Atman, as existence, consciousness, bliss, as Brahman, then the mind, there will be no more desiring, reaching out, grasping in the mind anymore. When the mind finds nothing out there to grasp, then it becomes a non-grasping mind, agraham. That is no mind. Then the mind becomes no mind. What does it mean?
The lack of desires, wants, the lack of desires.
Let me repeat a story, but it's very relevant here. I have already told you the story. The Princess of Kashi, many of you have heard it, but it's very relevant here.
He has so many stories. I love it.
The story goes that there was a prince, there was a kingdom in ancient India where in the court a play was staged. And in the play, one of the roles was the role of a little girl who was the Princess of Kashi. Kashi, you know, Benares, that was a big city in ancient India. Now, they couldn't find a little girl to play the role, so the queen said the prince can be dressed up. The prince was a little boy at that time, 5 years old, so he can be dressed up as a girl, as a princess, and he can be the Princess of Kashi. So they dressed up the prince as a princess, and the play was staged. And the boy looked so cute, the queen said, make a painting. Today it would be so easy, just click. But selfie or something. But make a painting. And the court painter made a painting, a portrait of the boy dressed as the Princess of Kashi. And he titled it, named it the Princess of Kashi, dated it, and so on and so forth. 15 years passed. The prince was quite grown up, 20 years old now, doing all kinds of princely things.
Oh,
and then one day he was exploring the palace and he goes into one of the old storage rooms underground and he looks around old stuff and he discovers this old painting, wipes the dust off it and sees the Princess of Kashi and says, oh, she's about my age, look at the date, so she must be as old as me. And he falls in love with her and he says, this is the princess I want to marry. Unless I marry this princess, I will never be happy in life again. A royal wedding?
That's actually very interesting. I think I understand the story already. This is a sure fact that he's already the person that he wants to be, or marry, or be. Either wants to marry, wants to be, inspires to be, whatever it is, it's you already. Essentially, you are the eternal bliss already. You do not need to seek outside for your eternal bliss because you are already it. You already have it because you're already it.
But he's shy. He can't tell his mother or his father, the king or the queen. And they notice something is wrong with their son because he is moping and he doesn't seem to be interested in anything anymore. Finally, a wise minister goes and asks him, what ails you, prince? You can confide in me. And the prince says, well, what can I tell you? I am in love. Very good. Who is she? Oh, she's the Princess of Kashi. Good, a princess. Perfect. That's very good. Where did you meet her? I haven't met her. I've seen her picture. A picture. Very good. Where is the picture? Well, it's down there. It's I'll show you. It's an old picture. It was painted when she was 5 years old. The date says many years ago, 15 years ago. Then the minister says, wait a minute, old picture and the Princess of Kashi. Can you take me to that picture? And the prince takes him down into that cellar and shows him the painting. And the minister sees that and tells the prince, you need to sit down for this. That is not the Princess of Kashi. So whoever she is, I'll marry her. No, prince. Many years ago, there was this drama staged. A play was staged in the court, and we needed to have a person who would play the Princess of Kashi, and We found you to be the perfect one to play the Princess of Kashi, so you are that thou art. Tattvamasi. And the prince sits down. And now what happens to the desire in the prince's mind? It is called in Sanskrit sankalpa. I want this. What happens to the desire? It disappears immediately. Why did it disappear? Because he could not fulfill it, because the Princess of Kashi, it does not exist apart from him. He alone is the Princess of Kashi and always has been. This idea of duality, something apart from him which is nice and which he wants, this led to the sankalpa in the mind. And that sankalpa, that desire, I want this. It could be the other way around also, something bad, I want to avoid this. I want to get this, I want to avoid this. Raga dvesha. This is at the root of samsara. His sankalpa disappeared immediately. Why did it disappear? Because duality, dvaita disappeared. There is no second thing, no person called Princess of Kashi apart from me. This is what the prince realized. Dvaita, duality disappeared. The moment duality disappeared, sankalpa in the mind also disappeared. That there is something out there which I have to achieve or get. No, it is me. And when the sankalpa is gone, raga, dvesha, attraction, repulsion is gone, it is me alone. What is there in me to be gotten rid of, or what is there in me to be achieved? It's always there with me. I am myself. So when the duality goes, merges back into the non-dual self, the sankalpa, it's a very beautiful story actually. It applies so directly to this. He says, when the reality is understood, atma satyanubodhena, na sankalpayate yada, when one realizes the truth about oneself,
the desires
that
goes
the Princess of Kashi is none other than me, then the mind does not do a sankalpa, that I want this. Why? Grahya bhave. Because there is no separate reality to grasp. Tadagraham, the mind becomes non-grasping. This non-grasping, ever-free mind, he says, amanastam tadayati. This is no mind. This is no mind. And this is freedom. Look, the difference here is, the prince still has his eyes open. The yogi would have said, don't look at the Princess of Kashi. Keep your eyes closed. If you don't think about it, it will be all right.
Wait, what?
The non-dualist Advaitin says, keep your eyes open. Experience the world as it is, but rooted in the knowledge of the self, that I am the non-dual self. This entire world shining forth. This world is your Princess of Kashi. This world, yes. This is your Princess of Kashi. The good and the bad, all of it is you. Not the slightest difference between you. By you I mean the real you. That's why Gaudapada first said, Atma Satyanubodhena. Once you realize the truth about yourself, after that, not as a body and mind, then everybody else is a body. If you are a body, everybody else is a body also. If you are a person, everybody else is a person also. If you are pure consciousness, then the entire world, you see, appears in you, the pure consciousness.
Okay, I had to pause it right there. It's running a bit long. I wanted to put something towards the end there about the prince who fell in love with, in a sense, himself. He's so full of himself. He loves himself too much now. I mean, you could also kind of get that from your story, that story a little bit. You could say the prince is in love with himself so much so that he's maybe arrogant, or you could kind of get at that a little bit. But I do wonder, though. I wonder if a person, I guess a normal person, I don't know, maybe an abnormal person, but after realizing that, it's like, oh, I wanted this person to be my wife. It's like, oh, that's me? Now I have a want that I cannot have, but I still want. So he would probably still have the desire to have someone as his wife. Even though that part is gone now, the desire of a wife is still there, perhaps. But I'm wondering, I would ask Swami here to say, did the prince not have a desire? He realized the desire of wanting a wife. He just found one, but now that one is missing, or is not there. Does that just automatically remove the desire of wanting a wife, even though that wife he cannot have? Well, I mean, he is that, but cannot have that desire of wanting a wife is still there, right? So that'd be a question I'd ask him. Just wondering if probably the story never said anything. I think obviously he said the story as in the fact that you are what you want, which is bliss, happiness, not a woman or a man or a cell phone or a brand new car. The thing that you want of eternal happiness has always been within you, and that's I think the ultimate idea of the story. But again, I just wanna wondering if that desire from the prince now still has that desire of a wife or a partner or whatever it may be. Anyways, that's part one of No Mind. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.